Good morning and evening, everyone. Today we will be focusing on the South African Communist Party, XD, by Mr. Assoy Jr. And here we have some photos of Luna on the top left, right here, and the top right. We have Luna holding the Communist Manifesto itself, a beautiful piece of art, um, promoted by Luna, Stan Luna, by the way. And we also have Olivia Hay at the bottom right, supporting and wearing her communistic out uniform. And we also have Red Velvet standing her Juseo Tai Kum Han and a communist cake. And then we also have a little bit of LGBTQ plus anime support for the communistic South African Communist Party itself. Now let's continue. So the question posed today is, to what extent was the South African Communist Party's attempt to stop apartheid successful? Yes, and here we see Gowon, aka SACP, choking apartheid. She's on that apartheid. That's on period. And we also see her, we see South Africa holding communism as a weapon, and that's dangerous. Continuing on, the early history of the South African Communist Party itself. So it was originally founded in Cape Town in 1921, and it was transpired, aka inspired, through two main events. Um, in history. So we have first the Bolshevik Revolution. The Bolshevik Revolution took place in the Soviet Union itself, in 1917, when the proletariat, aka the working class and peasants, revolted against the government of Tsar Nicholas II. Um, and this was actually led by the political party of the Bolsheviks. And this party was specifically led, furthermore, by Vladimir Lenin. And here, the Bolshevik Party and Vladimir Lenin wanted to promote their ideals of communism and, Leninism. So, this is where communism has become um, prevalent to the world, and we see that South Africa wants to utilize this and make it their own. Um, the second event is the growth of South African labor after World War One. So after World War One, we have economic disaster going on everywhere, even in America itself, and we see that because of this, because of World War One, there was a lowering of prices of mining products. So due to that, mining magnates proposed cutting white wages and suspending the color bar. And the color bar was the bar that um, restricted blacks to be allowed to be employed in semi-skilled and supervisory positions, such as supervisor, manager, HR, representative, things like that, like basic positions we have today. And due to the cutting of white wages, the proposal of cutting white wages, and the proposal of suspending the color bar, the white proletariat revolted actually and caused a standstill of mining production by the end of 1921. And because of this anger that the white proletariat manifested, um, the South African Communist Party actually took advantage of this moment and manipulated it. And we see on the side the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, and why the does everything cost money though? That's not period. And we see right here in the bottom left, BTS. Capitalism isn't going to overthrow itself, and that's on period. Thank you, boo. Now the reaction to apartheid. So, as seen in the previous slide, there was a furious reaction from the white proletariat, and one of the leading agitators actually was um, the South African Communist Party leader W.H. Andrews, also known as Comrade Bill. That was just a nickname that he had, um, just his reputation. And due to increasing tensions from the white proletariat against um, the suspension of the color bar and the growing of South African labor in South Africa, the Rand Revolt broke out in March 1922 to revolt against these proposals and attempts of integration and equal inequality. And at the Rand Revolt, 22,000 white workers protested, but as a result, Prime Minister Smutt ordered an army to the protest to fight back. And that led to 200 protesters dying in the fight. Um, because of this tragic loss, the Comintern, aka like the Communistic Global Community, demanded that the SACP um, shift its focus from white labor to the African proletariat, which is more reasonable since we are in South Africa itself. And by the end of 1925, the majority of party members were black, and in 1928, it called for black majority rule in the country. Despite its black majority, though, the SACP, I mean, sorry, typo, still held prominent white figures in the party. And here on the side, we see another meme. Maybe if y'all stand SACP, we would have a future. And that's on period. Stand SACP. Now the reaction to apartheid. The South African Communist Party worked to develop the labor movement extremely in its platform. And so in the late 1930s, their influence over workers grew tremendously. And despite its influence mainly being on the African proletariat, the party was very non-racial in its approach. And due to this non-racial um, approach, it actually is beneficial and a catalyst to showing the NAC to be non-racial in their fight for liberty. And as a result of the focus of as a result of the integration of races in its focus and the influence of workers in the 1930s, the South African Trades and Labor Council was formed. And this was basically a council that affiliated unions, it brought them together, brought them closer, and really fought for the proletariat party, which goes back to the Bolshevik Revolution, where the proletariat fought against the Tsar to gain power and gain actual reputation in their society. Um, Additionally, we see that the after the creation of the MK, another militaristic not communist, but another militaristic party, after its creation, the South African Communist Party sent a delegation to Moscow in early 1962. So the MK was specifically created to be like a military power against the enemy of the parties of South Africa to fight against their enemy. But since there was not a big support nor funding for military power, the SACP went into Moscow, and because of that, they secured funding and training and other support from the MK, the funds that the SACP also received in Moscow was paid for MK's safe house and Lily's Leaf farm in Rivonia. This also gave hope that the party, aka the SACP, the ANC, and the MK, that they were ready for military action against their enemy, the British government. And then we also see on the side right here, we see two Luna members holding their beautiful weapons, ready to fight. They are the MK themselves. They are ready to fight. And we also see my bias Eves doing her thing and giving support to the other parties of South Africa and the fight for anti-apartheid. So the assessment of success. So due to the upshot of the new law, the Suppression of Communism Act, the South African Communist Party was declared illegal and driven underground. And we see that right here with Gowan being trapped in a cell. Bruh, look who my cellmate though. Suppression of communism, period. Come on, Muslim. And due to like its ban, many of its leaders were also issued banning orders, but they defied it and continued to speak in public. This, however, resulted in their imprisonment and just led to a multitude of other issues. But the party was reconstituted still illegally as the South African Communist Party in 1953. And the SAIC leader, Yusuf Dadu, was elected chairman of the SACP, and Moses Kotane was elected party secretary of the new and reinstated SACP. Um, Furthermore, as the struggle against apartheid developed, the South African Communist Party and the ANC drew very close. And this is a very important relationship as the SACP gave the ANCT important ideals to carry on as their influence dissipated. The SACP showed the ANC to be more open-minded and to be less um, racially biased. And because of that, the South African Communist Party was just a party that was a key player in moves to further integrate anti-apartheid groups through the Congress of People, aka the COP. Um, and the role of the SACP just is vital. Um, the liberation movement across South Africa had little option but to rely on friendly communist governments to provide the necessary funding and logistical support and training for the establishment of its frontline military camps and bases. And the South African Communist Party, having connections to the Soviet Union, aka because once they infiltrated Moscow, they became a catalyst for this, and a lot of South Africa began to utilize the networking that the SACP had and, you know, heightened the liberation movement and the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And just the party played a key role in organizing two and strike actions, especially during the miners' strikes of 1946. They just heightened and empowered the proletariat class, and this was very important in like reassuring the position of blacks and working class members. And overall, the South African Communist Party was just a great party that um, to worked extremely hard through its non-racial bias in gathering people, uniting people, and ensuring that um, there will be support, whether militaristic or economically, um, for the South Africa that it wished to fight for. Thank you. Have a great night.